Okay, so today we are on the hunt for honestly, there's a few things we're on the hunt for. It is currently August 6th or 7th, I believe. And there have been reports of Thunderbolt Marvel Legends popping up at Walmarts, as well as the new Lego sets that dropped August 1st. So we're gonna go to Walmart. I don't really think anywhere else unless there's like a Meijer or something nearby, because I'm not trying to do too much. And yeah, we're gonna see if they have something. If they have the Thunderbolts, then I guess I'm gonna pick them up. And then maybe if they have a small Lego set of the new Star Wars wave, but those are getting crazy expensive, so we're trying to hold off on those. This isn't even the first kind of vlog of this. I did do another one, but it's really just me talking in the car, and I was like, that wouldn't be that entertaining. So we're gonna go and see what we have. So I grew up in 2008, like through the 2010, middle to late 2000s, 2010-ish. I was in elementary school around that time, and that was around the time of Star Wars: The Clone Wars. Now, if you're watching this video, you probably know what that is. It's an animated show of events that happened between Episode 2 and Episode 3 of Star Wars. And as a kid, I absolutely loved it. I remember waking up every Saturday morning to turn on Cartoon Network to watch, the villain of the week, Count Dooku, General Grievous, Asajj Ventress, and I watch their plans get foiled by Anakin Skywalker, Obi-Wan Kenobi, and Ahsoka. And this was a big part of my childhood. And obviously, as a kid, you watch something, you see them on screen, and you want toys of them. So I, I was no different, right? Um, Action figures were a big part of my childhood. I remember getting the small, kind of like 3.5 inch, um, around the 3 inch area. And, I remember I have a whole box of them. I remember getting characters of Anakin Skywalker, Captain Rex, um, Gree, Cody, all of the clones, and all of like the figures. And I remember I used to spend hours upon hours of playing with them, having adventures, and all sorts of things. All right, so I just dug out the old box, and this is this is insane. You got some pretty old figures here. I think these are the 3.75 inch, what they would now call vintage collection size. I don't actually collect any of them, so uh, yeah, very old, very beat up, used though, loved, which is good, I guess. Um, yeah, look at the face. Yeah, these had a lot of love. Um, the Captain Rex here, which is why another reason why I got the Black Series Captain Rex, was because it reminded me a lot of this. And I'm pretty sure like him, and then some of the other clones came in this packaging, which was this was a Black Series 50th anniversary, which is why they put it in this package. And yeah, these, oh my gosh, you got some McDonald's toys in here. Bionicle, I think there's a Bionicle McDonald's. And then yeah, just a bunch of just crap in here. Wow. The cards. Skylander card. Jeez. Yeah, the big toys. That broke, but you could put R2 in there, and then that, which was pretty cool. And I remember somehow you could push a button to disconnect this, or you just pulled, which is, I don't know if I can get this with one hand, but this thing came out. And yeah, that, wow, it's crazy. Yeah, that's it. So that was my collection kind of as a kid. and I would say that it ended there, and for a while it actually did, but as you can see, it didn't. But we'll get more into that later. I remember also from the kind of that same era, there was the Happy Meal toys, which I have a few of those. I think they might have been in the bin. I don't remember. And there were also like cereal box toys. I remember having like the light up lightsaber spoons that were really cool that you could get in Kellogg's boxes. And I remember that was it was just such a huge part of my life, going to the store. Like I said, just getting those, looking at all them. All my birthday was filled with socks and those figures, which was pretty cool. Um, I also remember the Spider-Man action figure because I think it was around that time. I don't know off the top of my head. It was like Spider-Man 3 was coming out, and I remember I had a Spider-Man and the Spider-Man symbiote action figure. And I used to take those everywhere, and I used to play hours upon hours of those, and it was really cool. Um, I think that was kind of early adolescence, not necessarily. This kind of mixes all into when I was a kid, growing up and elementary school. That was more of when I was younger, and the big kicker though was Lego. And if you know me personally, then you know I absolutely love Lego. And I remember getting my first set was well, I remember getting my first Lego Star Wars set, which was a Rebel troop transport, and my grandma got it for me. And there was a coinciding, Stormtrooper battle pack, which my brother got, and I remember we used to play with those for hours upon hours. And I remember for one of my birthdays, I had a $15 Toys R Us gift card, and I got it was like the droid attack on the Gungans on Naboo. It came with Jar Jar, and it was I spent hours playing with those, and I just remember there was so many hours of countless fun, of endless fun. Uh, I also remember all the Star Wars, the Clone Wars sets. Nowadays, these are classics. These are the epitome of Lego Star Wars. And I remember getting all the battle packs. Because I love figures. Present and past tense. Loved figures. Love figures. And I remember, like, yeah, it was something else. Getting a bunch of Legos around that time when I was growing up was more of the original Lego themes as well, like Power Miners, Monster Hunters, Lego City, and just Alien Conquest, of all those. And it was just super cool to see. It's just such a time to be alive because when I go through my boxes now, I just find old relics of them. I remember this guy came from this, and this guy came from this, and I remember it all, and it was awesome growing up on, because I think that sparked something very creative in me. I didn't like reading. I did actually like reading one kind of book, and that was the Lego character encyclopedias. I love them to death, and they're held together by duct tape now. The binding is because I used to flip through them like multiple times a day just because I love looking at all the figures, looking at figures I wanted, figures I had, and all the stats. And I remember it was something that I can't ever forget. Another part of that was Lego Ninjago, which has been a huge part of my life, and it's actually funny enough, it's really cool, to look back and see the person I am now, and the values that were instilled to me as a kid. Whether it was because I was raised, but I'm gonna tell a really funny story later about how Ninjago indirectly kind of got me a few $1,000s, and yeah. But I loved Ninjago, the original four. I remember watching the pilot episode, Rise of the Snakes, and I had a bunch of the sets. I have a full like tackle box full of all them still. Um, and I used to keep up with all the series up until Crystallized, which was kind of the end of the original. Now there's a whole new kind of show with a bunch of the old characters. I haven't watched it. I have one set, whether it be like a super small one from all of the series up to that point. I stopped watching, but I loved Ninjago so much. I remember trying to collect all the golden weapons, the fang blades, all of them, and that was also another thing that I spent hours upon hours of just watching and loving so much. Another thing I used to do a lot was the computer games, especially on Lego.com. There was a bunch of computer games, and on Cartoon Network, there was a bunch. I know there's the regular show like fighting video game, as well as a bunch on, like I said, Lego.com, whether it be Ninjago, Star Wars, as well as Lego Star Wars 2, the original saga or the complete saga. Um, and me and my brother used to play on the computer. And one time we played through dinner, and then we were all hungry. And I remember it was really funny, but that was just how much we loved the loved the game that much, and it was really cool. Um, I remember we were only able to get the little sets. We weren't any to get anything too big like these nowadays. As I have my own adult money, but it was a good time to be alive. There was still a lot of I would say, I don't want to say uncertainty, but it was still in Lucasfilm hands. So the content and media that was getting pushed out, it wasn't very constant like that. Instead, I think it took time, and obviously some had its flaws. Um, but it was a good time to be alive because computer technology isn't as prevalent as it was back then, or especially to me as a kid. Like I know my little cousins there, they spend all day on their iPads, and nowadays I kind of do too. But as a kid, I was able to grow up, and I'm glad I got to have those adventures with my action figures, with my Legos. They would go all around the house, on the stairs, they were on mountains or whatever, and they would go outside, in their ships, and it was just it was an awesome time to be alive. All those memories are something that I'll never forget, and every once in a while, I don't, I remember them and I don't forget them. Especially during COVID, I rewatched the Clone Wars, which was very nostalgic. I pulled out all my old stuff, and it was a good time. It was a good time to be around, and I think that is what this was from when I was a kid. This Jedi robe, um, and it was homemade. I think my mom made it for me, and it still fits, sadly. But you know, I think that's what kind of laid the groundwork for all my entire nerdum. I was I love cars, which I would say that's really nerdy. And I would say that this was kind of a good start. Depending who you ask, my dad hates Legos because whenever he used to step on them all the time. Um, and I think that's kind of what started this whole boogaloo of adventure. So, um, yeah. So they do have just that one, and I think I'm gonna get it. There aren't a whole lot of Black Series though. That's it. In terms of regular Marvel Legends though, they only have Captain Spider-Man, which is the normal, which is kind of an L, but they got that. They do have the new set, that one, and one of those. I might pick up one of those down there. Um, the theory's right when they only have one. Oh, two. Never mind. But crazy price, so probably not gonna get a big one, but maybe that. So we'll see. So the next part is gonna be like my adolescence. I'm gonna say it was during middle school, and I would say arguably this is the most I don't want to say interesting, but the most eventful part of my whole nerd journey. It was because, like I said, it was when I was in middle school, and middle school is when you kind of grow up from the kid, to the teenager phase, and there's a lot of behind the scenes kind of, I don't want to say peer pressure yet, but everyone wants to fit in middle school. Everyone wants to be, you know, they want to skip that phase and become an adult. And I think that's something to keep in mind throughout, this whole next part. Um, I had a deep love for Star Wars still, but I would say during this time where I kind of hit my dark age of Lego, of Star Wars. I would say this is the time where I've been like the least enthusiastic about it. this was like, um, I would say I bought the least amount of sets. I completely stopped with action figures. I know I just saved them. I threw them in a bin, as you could see. I showed earlier from that clip, the same bin actually. And I never touched them since. And I think, I thought action figures were, were very childish, were very something that, I'm growing up now. I don't want to really be a part of that. As well as, I didn't really play too much with my toys anymore. It was more of looking cool, more of a collectible. Um, Although I didn't, I thought it, but I didn't have those exact terms. um, but again, in terms of Star Wars, I know a lot of people usually, if you're in anything in the Star Wars I should say Lego community, there's a dark age that people always throughout every story you hear, usually, that people have in common, and that's kind of the part where they stop buying. They just didn't do a whole lot with it, and I would say that was mine. I still bought a few sets. Like I said, I had the Ninjago set from every season. That was part of it. That was a season. That was a few seasons that happened within that time period, so I still have a few sets from there. I do actually have a fair, so sets of Lego Star Wars from that time. Um, Again, that was a time I wish I bought because there were some really good sets from back then. Another thing I got into was Marvel. Um, as a kid, I remember seeing Captain. This is 2016, I believe. I didn't really watch a whole lot of superhero stuff back then, but I remember seeing Civil War in theaters. And I also had the Lego Marvel superhero game on the Wii. We got a Wii, so I love playing a lot of Wii games. I wouldn't say, or I'd say like Smash Bro. I never really got. This is just in general in my life. I never really got into Pokemon or any of that cards. I was a big Beyblade fan actually, which is kind of crazy that I didn't mention that in my last segment. But I remember watching Metal Fusion, Metal Fury, and I had a bunch. We sold them all. Storm Pegasus. We didn't sell them all, which I still actually have a few um, upstairs, but there's some actually behind me as we speak in the closet. But Earth Eagle. I remember asking for that for my birthday. Phoenix, and just so many of them, which was also a really cool time to be alive. Those got banned from my school. I remember because we weren't playing, quote unquote, playing enough, running around like we were supposed to. We just sit around it, and they all got banned, which was really funny. But it was still a great memory and a great experience. But as I was saying, Marvel, I really got into Marvel, so I started buying Lego Marvel sets. That also I'd say, coincide with my playing through of the Lego Marvel superhero games on the Wii U. I just bought them on the Xbox recently because I was like, those games are really good, and they really were. So that was another thing I kind of got into at that time, which I would say that didn't last. Or no, I would say I was more into that than Star Wars because I remember the MCU was getting really big, and that was just something where I was like, okay, that's cool. All the superheroes, which I really liked, and I'd still, as you can kind of tell, I'm still into Marvel a lot, as well as Star Wars. But um, yeah, another thing I would say that added to this layer of my dark age was all my friends were growing up as well. We always used to love Star Wars. We always used to bring our Lego figures in elementary school to recess, and we always used to play a bunch. But now, they didn't. They were more interested in hanging out with people and just growing up like a normal kid. And I really wasn't. I would say I'm more of an introvert, and I would just rather be by myself and be with all my stuff than hang out with people, which I guess says more about me. But I kind of felt like I needed to do that, to fit in as a kid, as any normal kid would do. So that's another reason why I kind of pushed away a lot of um, a lot of that. And as silly as it may sound, I tried to hide who I am, who I was, and not only hide it, but I think I was ashamed of who I am. Everyone around me is growing up. Everyone around me, seems to be moving on from this except me, and that was something that was big to me. Being accepted and being like everyone else. But if it's one thing, anything that has taught me is that, not only is it okay to be someone else, that's be who you are. and I'm gonna get into something in a few in the next segment, which is weird now. Like I said, I remember feeling all of this, and now looking at it through a more modern day lens and a more grown up lens. Um, and it's very interesting to me the way I think about that. It was also around that time where I started getting more into technology, tablets, phones, um, and YouTube channels. I loved watching. There are two things that I loved watching. That was stop motion YouTubers and people playing video games. Um, some of the big video games that I loved watching was like Hello Neighbor, Bendy and the Ink Machine, Corey Kenshin, Sneak Thief. I remember Corey Kenshin. I was big. I am a big fan of Corey Kenshin, and that's the one thing I'll always brag about is that I was with him since Sneak Thief, which I don't exactly remember how many subs he had, but it was way before a million. I remember that. But stop motion too was something I used to love. I still do love watching them because some of them are absolutely hilarious. I remember watching channels like Panashot, great channel. They moved away from more Lego now to other stuff, but it's like their work is still phenomenal. Forest Fire is a classic, notable for the Duck song, but if you look at a lot of the other channel, it's Lego Batman, which is hilarious. Another one like that is Aubrey Studios, which those videos they still crack me up to this day because they're hilarious. Um, Cash Lego Productions, and just a bunch of other great ones that I can't exactly think of right now. But they were just fantastic as they brought that to life. They did a lot with like I said, Marvel and Star Wars, which are really big, which kind of got me more into that as well. And I guess that was a way that I kind of lived out my nerdiness. Another thing was I used to have a lot of different channels of I think I've had like two or three channels. I remember there's only like 16, 20 subs for each, where I would do whatever random. I would try my hand at stop motion, um which I have a few unreleased videos, which I look at them now and I'm like, I remember I used to think it was peak cinema, but it it's not. And that's okay. I was just still a kid learning growing up, and if I watch my first stop motion video to my most recent one, which has been a year or so, you can see the improvement, and you learn from it, which is really nice. Um, that also gave me another outlet for my creativity. Like I said, as a kid, I always used to have so many hours of adventures, and it was like, I love doing that, and it's something I still love doing in one form or another. As some would argue, which I'd say I agree with. This is a form of art, of making this, of writing this, and just having this idea. But that's not really into the nerdy topic, nerdy discussion. That's something completely else. And none of those channels really sticked until well, we'll get into it. And I don't even know if this video is going to be uploaded on my normal channel or that channel. But we'll get into that because that can be its own little bullet point that I have here. Another thing I loved was video games. We got a Wii U, um, Xbox, and I remember playing games like Skylanders, Disney Infinity. All the Lego games, which are kind of the same, or not all the same, but they have the same mechanics, kind of same gist of it. Skylanders, Disney Infinity. You have the figure placing on there, and I remember that is kind of what I would say took up a lot of my time. Uh, as a kid, not necessarily the what it used to be playing for hours. As I said, I kind of grew out of that, and it kind of switched to video games, which I love video games now. Like I said, kind of switching, watching those YouTubers playing all those games. It was really cool. We have a lot of Nerf guns too, which I'll probably take a picture of it. Um, but I remember playing my house in my backyard hours upon hours of that, which was a really fun and a really cool experience. I also got into a lot of movies and TV shows. Like I said, I continued to watch Ninjago, watch Star Wars, watch Marvel. Um, I remember it always used to be such an event. It was used to be so big when a movie came out. There's a lot of quantity now, quantity over quality, which is it was cool because it felt super special when one of them came out, or like two or three came out a year. Um, and yeah, I remember it was 2015 when Rise of Sky, not Rise of Sky, when The Force Awakens came out, and it was my birthday weekend, and most of them released on my birthday weekend, like most of the new Star Wars movies in the sequel trilogy and Rogue One. Um, but that was always it was like a nice little gift that I always got on my birthday. So like I said, that was the dark age. I was very ashamed of of my interests and my hobbies. So whenever someone would ask me what I did, I'd say rec soccer, which I played, or just something that I was scared of getting made fun of. I felt different, and I felt like I shouldn't be liking all this stuff. Um, which it is how it is. I'm me now, and I don't think I would be now and be as comfortable as I am with my hobby if I didn't go through that. So I am grateful for it, but that was something that I was always ashamed of, and I was ashamed of it. Going into high school, which I would say is when stuff started to change. All right, we are back. It is a new day, and yesterday successfully picked up one of the two packs, Marvel Legend Thunderbolts, and I really like it. We'll probably see further in the video when I do a small little review on it to kind of finish these segments. But today we're going to two more WalMarts on the hunt. Hopefully, we'll find the other two pack with Red Guardian and Elena. Um, and I actually like that pack better than the other. The other one was Sentry and US Agent. So, like I said, two more WalMarts. I have also seen that some WalMarts have like a little bit of a display case of like just kind of them posed out, which I've never ever seen before, especially at a bigger store like Walmart. And yeah, so hopefully maybe we'll see one of those. That'd be pretty cool. And we're just gonna kind of see in terms of Black Series, there's one maybe Marin. If I see her, I might pick her up. And I didn't get any of the Lego sets yesterday just because I was looking at the price and I was like, I'm not trying to spend too much because, yeah, collecting stuff's getting up there. So hopefully they have something. And yeah, see you there. So, as goofy as it sounds, I'm kind of basing this off St. Augustine's Confessions in kind of the way, at least I break up this video. Um, so, this next segment's going to be like my high school experience, uh, and the next one's going to be my college and present experience. But I was entering high school and going into my freshman year. Obviously, I was meeting a bunch of new people, no one I really knew. And I still had that carryover from middle school. I was still ashamed of who I was, ashamed of my hobby, ashamed of my nerdiness, and I that carried over into my freshman year. Um, which it was kind of the same thing. I never really. I told there was one guy, my best friend, um, the one guy I could always talk to. He's awesome, but there was one person I could talk to about all my nerdiness. Who could keep up with my lingo. Keep up with what I was saying, and I'll always be very grateful for him. But besides that, whenever someone asked my interests, what I like to do in my time, I'd give them some random answer as I didn't really want to tell them. Um, but something happened my freshman year of high school. COVID happened, and as everyone knows, everything shut down, and really there wasn't a whole lot to do. Um, and that is when you know the 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 switch kind of flipped back. Um, I was so bored in the house, and I remember I started digging out my old junk. Came across those figures. Didn't really do a whole lot with them. Like, oh yeah, that's cool. I forgot about them. But really got back into Lego. I started buying a bunch more stuff, and after kind of COVID around 2021, 22, I got a job, and I had adult money, because at that time I didn't really need to pay for much. but also, it's a really great time to live if you're around a kid, and you're in high school. Obviously, depending on your financial stability, whatever. But I was fortunate enough to where I didn't really have to pay for a whole lot myself, and so I could spend it. I remember I got my first job at Kroger because I wanted the Lego Millennium Falcon, the Rise of Skywalker one from 2019. Uh, and that was just kind of a resurgence. And I just want to say it was kind of a love. I got the love and passion I had as a kid back. I got really back into Lego. I think I bought an entire wave, which that was that made my wallet bleed a lot. I'm never gonna do that again. But I bought the entire wave. Or it was like I don't think it was a year full, but I bought a crap ton of. I was a wave or two of Lego. Um, I'll never doing that again. As much as I love them, and they're so overpriced now. Lego Star Wars, but I bought a whole wave of Lego Star Wars. I was still really into Marvel. It was around that time. Endgame, Infinity War and Endgame came out, so that was always hype. Lego sets had a gimmick, where they had the Infinity Stones in individual sets. So obviously, I had to get them all. I got them all except one, which I believe was the Time Stone, because that was in the Sanctum. No, no, it was the Mind Stone. I didn't have, which was in the Wakanda set. Um, I just never got around to it, and I still don't have it, which is kind of funny. I have the rest. I have the Gauntlet, but that was a really cool time to be a fan. Everyone was coming together in the universe, and there was hype around that too. At my school with people, so I didn't feel as you know as an outsider as I thought myself to be. I felt more connected with pop culture as that became a bigger kind of thing. Nowadays, if you ask someone if they've seen a Marvel Star Wars movie, they'd say yeah, because it's just become that big of a thing. Um, I also got back, video games too. I replayed through all the Lego Star Wars games. I had nothing to do. I played through all the old games. I used to watch YouTubers, like I said. I used to replay Hello Neighbor, Bendy, all those games, Sneak Thief. I'm trying to think of. I feel like there's one big game I'm missing. I don't remember. That was the time of Fortnite too, kind of 2017, which was it was a great, fun game. Memories that I'll always remember. Hanging out with my buddies, getting clips. And I think another thing, the biggest thing that came out of this whole time period, was the Red Brickster 007. Uh, and I'd say I preface. No, actually, that is my current channel and my current kind of, I don't want to say brand, which I guess it is. It is my brand of nerdiness. I have a TikTok account as well as the YouTube account, which I haven't posted a while on YouTube. But this is kind of where I let my, you know, when the water pressure is building up, you sometimes just got to open it and let it go. That is kind of like what that is. If you go on that channel, which I'll probably link in the bio, I'll shout out. Or like I said, I don't know if it's being uploaded to this channel or the other one, but that's where I can get out my creative juices. I can discuss. I have so many different types of videos on there. I have stop motion videos. I have behind the scenes of stop motion videos. I have discussing new sets. I have discussing the year sets, and like I said, that's where I can get my kind of creative juices out. Um, and I love it. I love it so much. I would say that's the first successful channel, air quotes, and I think the biggest video has around 1,000 views, which it's not a lot, but if you imagine 1,000 people sitting in a room, I'm like, that's pretty cool. Um, and I think I'm really proud of that because, like I said, I found a few that I haven't taken off, which I didn't really think they would. And this one, I don't think I'm at 100 subs, which isn't a lot, but I'm grateful. 100 people is a lot of people, and I think that's really cool. Um, and I'm really proud of that. It's always a fun watch, a fun making a TikTok video of that, because those are quicker now. I'll link that probably too. So if you want to give it a follow, give it a follow. Shameless plug. But I think that was, again, I'm very proud of that. That is where, I don't want to say that's the epitome of my whole journey as a nerd, but I think that kind of shows more of like where the passion comes from, and what that kind of shows more in my everyday life rather than sitting down talking about it. I know I really haven't gotten into in depth into much. That's because I could spend hours talking about all of this. Um, and it was at this time where I felt more, going into my this was throughout high school, kind of going into my senior year. It was like I accepted who I was. I'm like I am a nerd. You know what? And there's nothing wrong with that. People around me. This was also like a very big time of self growth in my life, where I was accepting who I am. More of who I am myself personally too. And it was awesome. Great people around me, and it it was a time I'll never, like I have probably said throughout all these times. It's a time I'll never forget. It was a very big part of my life, and still is. Being able to talk to people about Star Wars, about Marvel, and I'd say that's the base level of nerdiness, or at least that's kind of the norm of pop culture. Of a nerd, um, and having the channel, I would say, is next level. And if you just watch stuff on there, you're like, okay, this guy's really nerdy. To people, and that's something I still kind of deal with, which I'll probably get into next section, which might be probably the longest. But I don't, not a lot of a lot of people in my life personally know I have a channel. Not a lot of people know about the figs or about a lot of it, but it was a good time in my life that, like I said, multiple times, I'll never forget. um, and this was when it was more, I think, more accepting. This sounds really stupid, but it was more accepting to be a nerd. It was more accepted to be in a Marvel, be to Star Wars without getting made fun of, which I felt like was, more of a thing back in my middle school days. Um, and I, graduating high school was, I was kind of really picking up and kind of finding my footing of where I am as a nerd.
All right, so we are out of the store and we were successful. Um, I went in there. Usually, my store doesn't have a whole lot, and so I wasn't expecting much. And I was thinking that I was gonna have to go to the second location, which I really didn't want to do. Um, and then, boom, the whole display was there, and they had the figure display. You can kind of see on the top, and yeah, it was really sick, as I saw they had some other they kind of had this whole section off, like spaced off like an island, just for figures. It wasn't all Marvel Legend, it wasn't always all Black Series, but yeah, it was still pretty cool to see. um there was some Gameverse Marvel Legends, which was cool to see. I didn't pick up any. I just picked up, what I was looking for. And then they had Captain America and Spider-Man, which they have at every single store. But something was interesting with the Black Series, which they had a little end cap. So I checked that out, and they had the Revenge of the Sith anniversary packaging, and those were $25, which is like the usual price for those. But then I don't know if you see down, like I took a picture of it, the reissued Stormtrooper from the Mandalorian. They had those, and it was $30, or at least it said it was. I'm pretty sure on the sticker price, which, if you have the quote unquote exclusive Walmart exclusives for 24, which if anything they'd be more expensive than the normal, Galaxy lines, the released everywhere waves, which was weird and odd to me. I don't think they're $30. I don't think there was a price increase, which I probably would have heard of. But yeah, it was still just something interesting to look out, to see. And then kind of in like the normal section where the rest are, there are some other, they had Andor, some Book of Boba Fett, as well as some Acolyte figures, which was still, you kind of see those everywhere, but it was still cool to see. Usually, yeah, my Walmart, they just have Vader's, Mando, kind of just the normal runaround, run of the mill figures. I did look at the Lego section, and they did have the new August wave, but of course I didn't pick up any because those are so overpriced. So yeah, that was really cool. These past few days have been a really cool hunt. No figure hunt, no hunt for anything, honestly, has ever gone this smoothly. Usually it's I have to wait a month. It's just disappointment after disappointment, but 2 for 2 never went this smooth. in terms of anything else I'm looking for this month, or for like honestly the rest of the year, maybe just the Marin Black series if it's out in the wild. And I have a list in my phone, and I think I have Anakin and Obi-Wan when those get released. And then other than that, I think that's it for the year. Yes, we're gonna go home, unbox them, and yeah. So all right, so I took them all out of the box, and here they all are. There's Sentry, U.S. Agent, Elena, Red Guardian, and they all look absolutely fantastic. I love how they're, they have like the darker kind of scheme, um, and yeah, I guess um, how up close you want them to get. He has a weapon in his holster, which it can't go out sadly, which would have been nice, but I'm glad the shield can clip to his back. Um, I don't know. She looks good. I don't know if it's something about the face, but it just looks a little off to me. But overall, really solid figure. Red Guardian, like I showed, I didn't really get him in a pose. I was just trying to get him to stand up. I bet if I took some time, I'd be able to get him to stand up. Sentry as well. Um, I know if he was a single release, if they all were, I probably would have got those three. Just not him. I don't know. Just not a big fan of the character. Or he was a good character, but I don't know. Just like the figure itself. He's got the plastic cape. He looks good. He's good. He's a solid figure, but nothing too special. And I just really like those three. I hope they release the rest of the crew. That'd be cool. But yeah, that's it. Like I said, that was probably one of the smoothest vlogs I've ever done, or like a toy hunt, which is crazy. And yeah, so now we're gonna actually film the video, so this is kind of gonna be the backdrop. So yeah.
Take one, part three. So kind of, I would say before I kind of get into this I had this idea all the way back in April. No, I'd say May, June-ish, of making this video, just because I remember I was talking to someone about it, and it just kind of got the ball rolling of like how crazy as like my nerd journey, my life has been, kind of looking through this lens. But I find it really fascinating now. It's currently August of 2025, and this summer Thunderbolts came out, which I really liked. I really enjoyed, as you can probably tell from the vlog. Um, Fantastic Four came out, which I really I really enjoyed, as you can probably tell. And Superman came out, which I loved. I absolutely loved it, which was from James Gunn, which made Guardians, which I loved Guardians 3. Uh, but I think something to mention about that is what kind of came out of that. Currently, it's a trend on TikTok, to this audio that says you need to nerd out, and it's a slideshow of people putting, what they're nerding out to. And I'm kind of glad that this video has kind of been in production limbo for the last month or two, because usually when I have an idea, I usually get it done relatively quick. It's the editing. I don't know when this video will pop out, but like I said, that's something that I find very interesting. Of as stupid as it may sound, like again, how acceptable, how publicly acceptable it is to be a nerd. Because I know people in there who put stuff, and it's like, it's not my place to judge whether, how nerdy someone is. I'm glad you're a part of these communities. I'm glad I have people to talk to about it, but it's like, I wouldn't say that, you're not as nerdy as me. And I guarantee you there's so many people that can say that, but it's like, it's in my mind. When do we cross the line of, okay, someone's a nerd and someone's not? Because I guarantee you, when people put all that stuff, they're not like this. Um, and that's not attack. That's not an attack on them. I'm just curious. What is that line? Um, and I think it's a great trend. Because like I said, that's something I've always struggled with, and it's kind of cool now how, there's that invincible audio of, it's cool to be a geek now. And to an extent, I think, it's cool. Something that I struggled with my entire life. That's cool now. And again, not to this extent. When I say I'm a nerd, people don't think I'm wearing a Jedi robe with Deadpool and Baby Yoda Grogu, I should say. I'm probably get ripped apart for that, but all this stuff. Uh, so food for thought. I think that's a cool trend. I might do it, might not, because again, people, I guarantee you, I get flamed, but I don't really care anymore. And that kind of goes into, I guess, my mentality now, where it's like I don't only accept who I am, but I'm proud of who I am. Um, it's something that, although it is something I still struggle with. Like I said, only a few people know that I love Star Wars: The Black Series, and I love Marvel Legends. I love Lego sets, and I love so much of it. My computer home screen is a Star Wars. My home screen used to be Star Wars. Um, and I've watched all the Star Wars shows. Rebels, Bad Batch is my favorite. Um, and I just I love watching animate. All the Tales of the Underworld, Tales of the you know I don't remember, Tales of the Sith, Tales of the Jedi, whatever those may be. Um, and I love all the media. It's pretty cool. Don't ask me about the sequels because no matter what I say, I'll get a I'll get put to the firing squad for that. But um, I like the saying that people say. It's like no one hates Star Wars as much as Star Wars fans, which I do agree. There's a lot of toxicity within the Star Wars community. Um, but I'm just doing my part, to be positive and have a good mindset of that. I'd say another thing about how accepted it is to be a nerd is bricks and minifigs. Um, I think that's a pretty cool story. I know little me would have flipped out about that, which would have been cool. I don't want to spend hours upon hours of there. Like I said, I'm really in this Hasbro Black Series, which has been, I think, 3 years now. I got my first Crosshair fig, and I don't know if I'll take a picture of my collection, but you've seen it. Um, you can look at my TikTok account. You'll see it. I recently got into Marvel Legends, which was a mistake because I love them so much. If you're thinking about getting in collecting, my number one advice for you would be don't, because it's very costly, and people say it's plastic crack, and it is. Uh, Self control too. You got to budget out, but that's a whole different tangent. Um, I would say that I still, again, like I said, I love superhero. I love Star Wars. I still keep up with a lot of it, and it's had a positive effect in my life. Like I said, I don't really keep up with Ninjago a whole lot anymore. Um, but I had for my college, I had an opportunity to get a scholarship, and I was having a really hard time in my life. My grandma passed away, and it was around that time, and I wasn't checking my email, my school email for this scholarship. So I had a few days left to prepare for it, and I was like, I don't know what I'm gonna do. But this one saying from Ninjago stuck out to me. What Zane says. He always says, "I was built to protect those who can't protect themselves." And I used that, and I kind of spun it in a way I wanted to help people who can't help themselves. And that was kind of my whole thesis, my whole base of my scholarship presentation, and I got it. And I think that's just a positive. That's cool on how this stuff can affect your life. I love Spider-Man, Superman. They all stand for hope, and just a lot of this, has been a positive influence in my life and in the way I view it. Um, and like I said, I still hide some of it as, I don't want to say I'm ashamed, but it's more of my personal. It's where I find my solace. One of the places, my least place I find my. I can just go away into the world. I can just look at all of it and just be like, yeah, you know, it's comforting as I deal with a lot of stuff nowadays. Um, and I think it's really cool. Like I said, I should have wrote all this down. I have a few notes, but it's like I could yap about this for hours. It's been a journey. I don't know how well I've dug deep into these topics. Um, from loving it as a kid to kind of hating that part of myself, to accepting it and to loving it. Um, but it's something that I don't think I'll ever let go of. And if you're watching this, whether this gets 1 or 1,000 views, I encourage you to follow your dream. Um, I'm into figures, into Star Wars, into Lego, into Marvel, into video games. I never really got into Pokemon or any of the card kind of things. But I would say it's good. It definitely has been a great experience and a great thing in my part of my life that I'll never forget. So if you're watching this, I encourage you to to follow your passions, to do what you love, and to keep on going. So, yeah.